Good morning, this is Pastor Keith Hodges, and I want to welcome you today to Everyday Sunday. I'm coming to you this morning from our cafe at our Arab campus, and I just had an awesome time fellowshipping with some of our local pastors. And let me just encourage you, if you are not connected to a local church, Arab is an amazing place. We've got some amazing pastors, men with a heart for God, and I really want to encourage you to get connected to a local church. Of course, we'd love to have you at Liberty Church at our Arab campus or our Holly Pond campus, but God is doing some great things. Well, Psalms 118 verse 24 says, "This is the day the Lord has made. We will rejoice and be glad in it." It's Wednesday, hump day, getting through the week here. I hope that you're pressing in and holding on to the good news of the gospel of Jesus Christ. Well, this morning, I want to share with you a message simply entitled WWJD. WWJD, I hope you remember that, right? It's something that was famous a few years ago. What would Jesus do? I want to talk to you about that little phrase, WWJD. 1 John chapter 2, verse 6 says this: "Those who say they live in God should live their lives as Jesus did." Those who say they live in God should live their lives as Jesus did. So if I confess that I'm a Christian, then I should live my life like Jesus Christ lived his. What would Jesus do? So let me ask you a question. Can it really be that simple? Well, I believe the answer to that question is yes and no. Yes, it is that simple. I want you to hear this because Jesus is the perfect example. He is the perfect example of what Christianity is supposed to look like. So what would Jesus do is really a simple question that brings us back to the core of Christianity, because following Christ means doing what Jesus did. So yes, it is that simple. And then no, it's not that simple. Let me tell you why. Because in order for me and you to do what Jesus did, we actually have to know, what did Jesus do? We actually have to know, what did Jesus do? So our first challenge for the day, let me give you this challenge, this Wednesday morning challenge. Our first challenge is for me and you to become a student of the life, the ministry, and the message of Jesus Christ. The words in red, that's what Jesus said. You need to know those words. You need to look at the life of Christ. So I want to challenge you today. If you're going to live by this question, what would Jesus do? If you're going to allow 1 John 2:6, those that say they live in Him should live their lives as Jesus did. If you're going to let that become the standard and model of your life, then you've got to know what Jesus did. You've got to study His life, learn His message, and look at the example that He set so that we can begin to live our lives according to the standard of WWJD. So I think that WWJD is powerful because it causes us to do something. This is what it causes us to do. It causes us to actually check up just a little bit, right? To kind of just check up in what we're doing and say, okay, before I respond, before I react, before I engage, I've got to do something. What I think is powerful about WWJD is it checks us because it requires us to do three things. It requires us to pause, it requires us to ponder, and it requires us to pray. So let's talk about those three things. So the first thing that has to happen is we have to pause. We have to stop. We have to refuse to respond in our flesh or according to our feelings, and we have to ask the question, what would Jesus do? If I'm going to live by that little mantra and let Jesus be the model by which I live my life, then before I make a decision, before I respond in my flesh, before I get in my feelings, before I allow the circumstances of life to pressure me into doing something that I'm later going to regret, I've got to pause. So WWJD causes me to hit the pause button, and all of a sudden, I've got to ask the question, okay, what would Jesus do? And then once I pause and ask that question, now I have to do the next P. I have to ponder. We actually have to think through, listen to this, think through and look at the life of Jesus for an example that fits our current circumstances or situation. So we have to ponder. So we got to pause and say, what would Jesus do? And then we have to ponder that thought. We have to actually look at the life of Jesus, ponder through His life, His message, and His ministry, and find an example from Jesus' life that actually matches the circumstance or situation of our life. We can't just pull something out of context and use it to apply to our life because that's the answer we want. No, we have to ponder. So we've got to pause, we've got to ponder and look at Jesus' life and find a real example to find out what would Jesus do in this circumstance. And then we have to pray. Now, this one is interesting because the more you know the Scripture and the more familiar that you are with the life of Jesus Christ, I want you to hear this, the less you have to pray. Pastor Keith, what are you talking about? The more you know the Scripture and the more you are familiar with the life of Jesus Christ, the less you have to pray for discernment. See, if I know what Jesus did, right? If I pause, what would Jesus do? If I ponder, look at the life of Jesus Christ, and then I find an example from his life that fits the situation I'm in, then guess what? The moment I know what Jesus did, I no longer have to pray for wisdom. I no longer have to pray for discernment. I no longer have to pray for direction because I now know what Jesus would do. And if Jesus is the perfect example of Christianity, then once I know what Jesus would do, I don't have to pray. I don't have to pray for discernment, direction, or for clarity. I know what I'm supposed to do. So this is what happens. When I begin to pray, I'm no longer now praying for discernment. Now I'm praying for the grace and the strength to do what Jesus did. Because all of a sudden, when I look at Jesus' life, I'm going to find out if I'm going to do, what would Jesus do? Well, he probably would forgive them. He probably would walk in love. He probably would show them grace. He would confront them, but he would never condemn them. He would challenge them, but he would never judge them. And all of a sudden, I begin to look at the life of Jesus, and WWJD causes me to pause and ask the question. It causes me to ponder and think about the circumstance, and then it causes me to pray. No longer praying for discernment or direction, now praying for grace and strength to do what Jesus did. So I want to read our scripture again, 1 John 2:6. Those who say they live in God should live their lives as Jesus did. I want to encourage you today. Let's live WWJD. Let's pause, ponder, and pray, and let's do the things that Jesus would do and see the results of his kingdom in your life. God bless you today in Jesus' name.